right, welcome back to Business and we are still talking matters the economy. Now, just away from some of the major trending issues this morning in the economy now, if you're into betting, then you will know that the services for Sport Pesa and betting are not available. We've already told you that. But of more importance is that today, as we know of it, by close of business by 5 p.m. tonight, your old 1,000 shilling currency note will be waste paper. So now, tell anybody, tell everybody, tell someone, tell anybody, from now to 5 p.m., get yourself into a bank, all right? And get that money exchanged. Because if you don't, at the end of the day, you were somewhere without your money. Basically, that's just waste paper. Use it to light a fire. All right, that's exactly what it is that we're talking about this morning. Anyway, other than that, there are other factors of the economy that you really have to know. And this morning, I want us to have a conversation around intellectual property. Do you know what that is and why do you really need to understand it? So for the next 20 minutes, let's talk intellectual property. Still have the same man in the studio, all right? It's actually the only day here on Business AM where you are getting to know exactly what he does and how he does it, isn't it? All right, so I'm going to leave that introduction part now officially to him, and then we see exactly where we start our conversation from this morning. Should I say welcome back, isn't it?
Yeah, we should.
We've been together, okay? So this is the only part of the show where I don't get to talk much. I leave the talking to you so that we can exactly now dive further into this conversation on intellectual property, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. So now, as always,
Yes.
the introduction is yours.
Yes.
Now, people are going to get the privilege to know exactly what it is this man does. Okay. Let's talk about it then.
My name is Ogwang Omuga, but my friends, people who consider themselves my friends, they call me Blacks. My first thing that I started to do to generate revenue is I've been producing music. I'm a music producer. I studied music and sound engineering.
Yes.
So music is one of those things that actually started bringing cash into my hands. And then about the same process, as I was going about my business, I come to a point whereby I got very much incapacitated. Because as musicians in the marketplace, there's only a ceiling that every musician reaches.
Yes.
And that ceiling can only be broken by an awareness either of business models or of something called intellectual property.
Yes.
So intellectual property is the branch of law that I practice. I only practice intellectual property law. That does not mean that I'm not actually good in other areas of law. I'm exceptionally gifted in other areas of law, but out of a personal preference, I chose intellectual property because intellectual property is the most underappreciated resource we have in our time.
Yes.
So if I was just to help our viewer, intellectual property is the creation of the human mind that has an interest in commercialization.
Yes.
Most of us, we have always mistook intellectual property with intellectual property is the creation of the human mind. Once we stop there, then there is another higher threshold to be met. That if I'm to make economic exploitation of what I am doing, then it's in my best interest to be aware of intellectual property. Intellectual property is the creation of the human mind with the interest of commercialization. That means that everything that the human mind can think, everything that the human mind can create should actually develop a market. Everything that an individual can think and can put together out of the functioning of your own mind, functioning of your best judgment, functioning and the creative expressions of your mind, then that thing, whether in academia, whether in sport, whether in music, whether in art, whether in fashion, whether in writing a book, markets should actually come out of that thing you're doing. So when an individual is actually engaged in converting their forms of intellectual property and they are creating markets, then such an individual, we can say they are intellectually aware. They are aware of their property. They are aware of what this thing can do.
Yes.
So Simba, intellectual property is the creation of the human mind with an interest of growing markets.
Yes.
Yes, Simba.
Good. And they say that this is one of the most underappreciated
Yes.
resources within
Yes.
the economy. What
Yes.
would you say that is one of the most underappreciated?
It's because it's very easy. Today, if I ask any individual in the street and I ask you, what do you own?
Yes.
Someone will tell me, I own my suits, I own my car, I own my ring, I own this, I own things. We are very much easy to talk about things that we can see, because things we can see are definite. I can see that gentleman, I can see this camera, this is definite.
Yes.
But what you cannot see, then that one is harder even to approach it. It is harder even to appreciate it, so to speak.
Yes.
Because it's very hard to appreciate an idea. What's an idea? An idea is a thought impulse. Most of us, we live our ideas either as a thought impulse or as an interest.
Yes.
But the reason why we are saying that intellectual property is the most underappreciated is that even in corporate Kenya today, very few organizations are exploiting their intellectual property to build their business models.
Yes.
So our businesses and our markets are structured around what we would call traditional models. You make this glass, sell this glass. But let me ask you all, where did this glass come from? This glass came from a drawing, right? This glass came from a drawing. Mm-hmm. So who owns the glass? Is it the person that manufactures the glass or the individual that started drawing the glass? So the individual that started drawing the glass actually owns the glass market. It is that individual that can move and shake this market according to what they understand.
Yes.
So in the interest of growing entrepreneurship, in the interest of growing the entrepreneurial culture in Kenya, whether as an emerging entrepreneur or as an established brand, it's very important for us to audit our intellectual property.
Yes.
What forms do they take? Are they in forms that we need to build upon, or are they at a form whereby we can sell them as they are? Mm-hmm. And that is the reason why we are underappreciating intellectual property, because it's something that it's not tangible.
It's not tangible, isn't it? Would you say, therefore, that the Kenyan market, the way that it is placed, I mean, there's a lot of talk about even how M-Pesa was started and
Yes.
exactly what's going on around it.
Yes.
That one, we'll leave it for another day.
Yes.
Would you say that we are accustomed to tangibles and the real money, the real market, the whole understanding of the market
Yes.
is just within the intellectual aspect of that?
It's because, Simba, even if you go today to a bank,
Yes.
yes, and you're seeking for credit facility, they will always ask you for land.
Yes.
No one will ask you, hey, what was your project? What was your degree on?
Yes.
That in your degree, that project you did, we find there are the economic equivalent components in your project that we can actually advance you credit on your project. Mm-hmm. It's not something that is superfluous. No, it's a conversation that the developed world, actually in Europe, 97% of the economy is purely intellectual property. Us guys, it's the reverse. We value land more than we value ideas.
Yes.
It's because it's very easy to apportion value on land. If you have 50 by 100, someone will ask you, where is that land? And you say, it goes somewhere on Thika Road. And someone says, that one 50 by 100 would go for 2 million shillings.
And that's pretty much
Yes.
now what you own, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes. Mm-hmm. So if it's very easy for a bank to advance me a credit for 1.6 million. Why? Because my land is valued at 2 million. But the intricacies, the finer operations of my ideas is far much valuable than land. Mm-hmm. But it's easy to deal with land than to deal with ideas. Why?
Yes.
I don't know how to build value in my idea to make it to grow.
Yes.
So intellectual property, that awareness comes to help you as an individual to identify, if I am good in this way, Why is it that everything about our economy, everything about our civilization, as at now, was a function, a product of thought?
Yes.
Vision 2030, a function and a product of thought, right? The Big Four agenda, a function and a product of thought, right? All of us in this room, everyone has a degree or a diploma,
yes,
or a master's or a PhD
yes,
in something or another. How many of us are actually using our degrees? Because we only use our degrees to get employment. The moment you've gotten employment, you leave the knowledge that you have put out in academia. That knowledge that we put out in projects is actually proprietary. Proprietary simply means something that you can touch a claim to. So which means, as Elijah Simba, you own the project you did for your undergrad.
Yes.
So the thing is this: have I valued, have I identified in my project what is actually mine? Your project might have 10,000 words, but of the 10,000 words, there are specific concepts, there are specific phrases that it's actually you. Yes. No one else has ever put it.
Yes.
Now, if we can help our people to appreciate the different forms of intellectual property, then we can grow market spaces whereby we will begin to appreciate everything we are doing, because I understand that an economy can come out of my talk. An economy can come out of my sound.
Yes.
An economy can come out of my gaze. Why? Because this gaze can actually create a product. That gaze can actually create a service. But most of us, we are not aware of knowing that this component, this extent, is actually intellectual property.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you look at the Kenyan market specifically and the Kenyan economy, what do you think the disconnect begins? I mean, would you place it somewhere and say that this is what needs to happen now for the Kenyan market to recognize intellectual property as a resource that is undervalued?
The problem starts from our classroom.
Yes.
It starts from our classroom from the get-go, from class 1. Now we have grade 1. From class 1. We have never been taught that you have the ability to churn out authentic knowledge. So all of us, what we do is to regurgitate. We regurgitate. We regurgitate. Then we limit that avenue whereby my authentic thinking can become. My authentic thinking, because thought has one or two points of expression.
Yes.
Your thought can actually be something that someone told you, and something that someone has actually asked you to consume over a number of time, over a period of time. Then that thought becomes what you have regurgitated.
Yes.
But equally, thought can be original. Thought can be original from the get-go. From the get-go, if I help my kid, if I help if I'm a teacher, and I'm intellectually property aware, then I can help this individual to become authentic. This is how you can do your thing. So in academia, from the get-go, but let me ask you, from class 4 in Kenya, we start putting together compositions.
Yes.
And compositions actually helps our aspects of expression, either through creating and coming up with stories, coming up with thought patterns, and a line of flow of such a story. How many people live handsomely in other parts of the world out of that, out of realizing that if I'm a storyteller, that the story and the way I approach a story is actually my intellectual property? So which means we can actually help people to be aware that, do you know this thing that you're doing? Do you know that this market can come out of it? Do you know that this thing you're doing, do you know that this aspect can come out of it?
Yes.
Sports is another huge unexploited avenue. We have people that have tremendous names, but they don't have the awareness to unlock different aspects of their economic productivity.
Yes.
So the problem starts with academia. There's a huge disconnect in Kenya between academia and the market space.
Yes.
That aspect of connecting the market space and academia comes with us knowing to what extent of what we are putting out is actually proprietary, to what extent of what we are putting out is actually can actually develop markets, to what extent of what I'm coming out with in academia is actually authentic thought.
Yes. It's the biggest issue really when talking about intellectual property as a resource, therefore,
Yes.
is the economic value out of it.
Yes.
It's getting money out of this.
Yes.
And I want to open you to exactly what it is that we already see in Kenya. It's either the open functions or the open channels for us is either you get an avenue, get an investor,
Yeah.
all right? And we do know exactly what KCB Lion is doing, isn't it? We see exactly what goes on there. So you tend to think that even at the end of the day, we're talking about intellectual property. The last question is,
Yes.
where is the money out of it?
I always tell people that don't go for some of these places.
Yes.
Because when you come to a show, you have no idea
Yes.
who will steal your idea in the audience land. Not even the people, the investors. But to restrict the question and the answer to investors.
Yes.
Why are investors investing? Investors are investing because they have seen there is something in this that can actually be exploited. As an investor, I'm seeing my reach is 250 million people in East Africa. We have
Yes.
250 million people. So
Yes.
that means that if I engage with this thing, then I can take advantage. But from an entrepreneur is, what are the specific value drivers? The specific value drivers in any idea. I can tell you for free, the first trouser that they ever didn't look like this trouser.
Yes.
But this trouser commands a market. But guess what? The individual that actually owns this suit and me are two different people. There's a person who owns this suit. There's a person who owns the trademark in this suit, the design of this suit. But let me ask you what. In every church you go today, there is a tailor. What's the difference between that tailor who is tailoring and maybe tailoring in a month, he only sells to 10 people, and this individual? This individual has created an entire economy out of this. And 9 out of 10, they don't even know how to stitch. They're just designers. But guess what? Out of that awareness that there is something unique with my design, there is something unique with my... A song is not an end in itself. A song is a gateway to an entire industry, an entire economy out there. That once I have a song, it's just the same way with the designer of this suit.
Yes.
The gentleman that designed this suit, maybe he only designed once. But this gentleman will earn from this suit for the rest of his life and for the rest of the lives of his children's children. There is this boxer that is called, and they haven't paid for, so I don't know, I'm torn between mentioning.
That's fine. That's
Okay,
fine
okay.
for the purpose of the conversation.
There is a manufacturer called Calvin and Klein.
Yes.
And they manufacture boxers. Do you think they manufacture those boxers in the US? Those boxers are manufactured in Kenya at EPZ. Calvins and Klein are in the US. They are exploiting a component of their intellectual property, and they are doing it handsomely. If you check the papers, they entered into an agreement with the EPZ
Yes.
for 4.3 billion Kenya shillings. That is the value. So if we want to be very serious with entrepreneurship, if we really want to grow spaces in Africa, then we cannot afford to neglect the role intellectual property can play in you as an individual. First, as an individual.
Yes.
I'm telling you, the individual that designed this is actually the owner of that industry. And you might find that the individual that designed this glass is actually not the one who is producing this glass. So that individual owns the entire industry. In the same way, in business, in entrepreneurship, whether it's an idea, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's a value proposition,
Yes.
whether it's a business process, everything that we are doing in our market spaces, other things can come out of it.
Yes.
So the future of entrepreneurship in Africa, the future, and it's intellectual property ignorance is not only in Kenya.
Yes.
It's actually The rest of Africa. Because the rest of Africa, we are apportioning value to land. And land is the fastest going commodity that we have. It's actually scarce resource.
It's actually now diminishing.
Yes.
All right, I want to ask you this question finally, therefore, to cap this conversation this morning.
Yes, Simba.
I feel how you speak about it. You're very passionate about it.
Yes.
The examples you give actually just spot on.
Yes.
Do you believe, therefore, that there should be investments within the Kenyan economy, all right? So they pretty much go further to actually open the eyes of the entrepreneurs in the country, like, wait a minute. It should not be about the end product. There is a market here that is actually getting underutilized. And which partners do you think now, or which bodies within the Kenyan economy are actually sleeping on this job that we need to wake up this morning?
It's one.
Yes.
It's the entrepreneur themselves.
Yes.
Because intellectual property, and this is where kuna a lot of misunderstanding.
Yes.
Intellectual property, no one gives you right over your creation.
Very much.
No one. It's my creation. I do with what I want with it.
Yes.
So if I want to create an economy, who owns Coca-Cola? Because no one even knows what Coca-Cola is. Why? Because those guys identified that in their formula there was something secretive, and that's why they have slapped a trade secret on the Coca-Cola formula. The future of entrepreneurship first is with the entrepreneur, even before you go to government. I'm a patent agent with Kipi, right?
Yes.
Even before you go to Kipi, for Kipi to give you, hey, this is your trademark certificate.
Yes.
Right? If I give you a trademark certificate and you don't even know what that trademark certificate will unlock, have I helped you?
Very much not.
So the issue is, as an entrepreneur in academia, everyone with a head has a product of intellectual property. So that means from today, any person you see walking, you should ask them, are you aware of your intellectual property? Are you aware of the diverse forms your intellectual property take? Because intellectual property is amorphous. If I hand you my vibrations of thought, you will turn them out and bring them out in journalism. But if you hand me your vibration of thought, I can transform them into a song. I can transform them into a track. I transform them into something else.
Yes.
Because intellectual property is like water. It takes shape of the obstacle that it's placed in, or the substance that it's placed in, but it is in itself, it is shapeless. So intellectual property begins, that awareness begins first with the individual. What can come out of my degree? That is what I ask students everywhere. Anyone with a degree, a diploma, a certificate, a higher diploma, a master's, even a PhD, what market can come out of what you did? Because let me tell you what, that thing that you advanced, if at all it was not plagiarized,
yes,
that thing that you have advanced is authentic knowledge. And that authentic knowledge can grow its own market. That authentic knowledge can grow its own industry. The person who sketches and they purport they want to tailor, right? That sketch in itself alone can create an entire industry. The person who frames up things, the framing up of things alone can create its own industry. Facebook is built on an algorithm. That algorithm created an entire industry. M-Pesa alone created an entire industry. All of us in this time, if we wish to grow our productivity, if we wish to increase our value proposition, then it begs us to ask a question. What do I have? Do I know what I have? Do I know the dimensions of what I have that it can take? And if I know what I have, I tell people wherever I go, the best thing to give any individual is to give them options. Right? If you give me options, I'm never worried. I tell people I don't even have a CV. Why? I have options. Even if they take my law practice away, guess what? I'll still make music. I have options. That is what we want to give people. That intellectual property helps you as an individual,
yes,
to identify that this thing I can do. The tone that you give, like, yes, yes, that tone alone can create multiple markets avenues. Because all of us are bundles of possibilities, and those bundles of possibilities can be channeled deliberately into specific markets. Yes, Simba.
Well, intellectual property. I mean, I couldn't say better. Hope you've been listening, you've been taking notes. A lot of you have been asking for his number. Guess what? Please tell us what you want to talk to him about before you ask for his number, because we'll give it to you immediately. All right. This has been Business I Am. My name is Simba. Elijah Charles Kiage. I've been with this man. You do know him throughout the show, and you now understand why we wanted to have him throughout the show. Good morning. I'll see you at 11, 12, and 1 p.m. for Metropole News and Briefs. And then after that, I'll see you tomorrow for another edition of Business I Am.